Hello, all, and welcome back to another episode of TV and Us, a conversation show about the TV series we just can't stop talking about. My name is Jennifer Hahn.
And I'm Sarah Callan.
And each season, we focus on a different show, reviewing it episode by episode, and we invite you to watch along with us. Right now, we are reviewing The Last of Us Season 1, and today we are on episode 6, titled Kin. If you haven't watched it yet, this is your spoiler. Please check it out before continuing to listen to the rest of this episode. Okay, Sarah, start us off with a summary for episode 6.
After ignoring the advice of locals, Joel and Ellie descend deeper into dangerous territory in search of the flyer. Nope. Why is it called the Fireflies? I always want to say the Flyerflies, and that's not what it's called. Let us try that again. After ignoring the advice of locals, Joel and Ellie descend deeper into dangerous territory in search of the Fireflies and Tommy.
Okay. Wow. We have made it. Is your Enneagram 3 self so pleased?
We have accomplished the goal. We have found Tommy. Yes.
Yes, we have. Okay. Well, let's start off with our episode title of choice for the 6th episode of the season. Sarah, what is yours?
Mine is Congrats.
Oh, nice. That is a loaded episode title. If y'all watched the episode, you know. Oof. Okay, my episode title is Christmas Trees and Bacon.
Yes. Ooh, this is a holiday episode.
Yes. Look at that.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, let's dive right in. Lots happens in this episode. Sarah, tell me your thoughts about the events that transpire.
Yeah, so we jump ahead in time, and our heroes have made it all the way from Kansas City to Wyoming, which, I don't know, that feels pretty impressive in 3 months. And they meet Tommy and discover that he has a whole life there. And so that revelation really causes some tension between Tommy and Joel, and then Joel and Ellie, and Ellie and Tommy and his wife, and just everybody is tense. Everybody's having some triggers in this episode. Yeah, and then Joel and Ellie depart once again, and it leaves an opportunity for a cliffhanger. So you have to come back and watch the next episode next week.
Yes.
So just a lot of character stuff in this episode, and I'm curious to see what this is potentially setting up for the last couple episoes in this season.
Of all of the cliffhangers that we've gotten this season, though, I would say this one's probably the least highest cliff because plot armor.
Yeah.
But it does beg the question, like, how will their journeys unfold next? Like, does Ellie need to go off and get help and come back? And what dangers does she have to navigate on her own? Or like, how are they going to get themselves out of the situation? Is kind of a fun thing to think about and wonder as we head into the next episode. But yeah, this is a pretty emotional episode, I will say, which I think is, again, fitting after coming off of an incredibly like big action episode from the previous one, episode 5. We get that giant infected beings attack. And so this one's like really done a lot for the character growth, some breakthroughs that happen, some real moments of vulnerability that happen in this episode, which I think feels fitting, especially for the place that episode 6 is in the larger like arc of the season. You know, we've seen and we've learned about some of these trigger points, some of these wounds that these characters have been carrying and they've been alluded to, but now we get to really see them come to the surface and rub up against each other between some of our most beloved characters. So I thought all of that worked really, really well. There's a really great scene where Pedro Pascal, just in this episode in general, is doing such an incredible job. But there's one where he gives a whole monologue to Tommy that I was like, yeah, this is hitting all the feels. And it's notable because we've seen Joel hold it together for 5 episodes up until this point. And it feels right that it's in the presence of family that he can really let down so many of those hard exteriors and those walls and that pressure to be the caretaker. He can finally kind of lay those down. And I loved seeing some of that acting. It was really, really great. Tugged on my heartstrings for sure.
Yeah, yeah. He does a great job in this episode. There's so many deep emotional moments from Joel that, like you said, he has been suppressing for all of these episodes, and now we get to see that other side of him. And I appreciated the way that Tommy and Joel's relationship kind of just unfurls throughout this episode, because at first, obviously Joel is very excited to see his brother and he expects the conversation to go one way, and then it doesn't. And you learn that Tommy is married and he has set up a life here, and that's not what Joel was expecting. And you see this just flurry of emotions in Joel that he probably wasn't prepared for, and the way that their conversations evolve over this episode is really interesting, because he goes from walls up, not letting you in, I'm done, I'm not doing this with you, I'm going on my merry way, to then opening up and finally being vulnerable and expressing all of those things. And then the empathy and compassion that Tommy is able to meet him in that moment is really touching. So those were some really, really good, powerful scenes that feel like they were well deserved, because we've seen Joel just go through so much over 5 episodes, and now we see, that wall finally comes down.
Yeah. And what's great is that we have seen 5 episodes, but the show also really insinuates like this has been years, that Joel's been separated from Tommy, and so and been like navigating and fighting for his life and the life of the people around him, that you were like, man, this is a long time coming where he can finally just like breathe out a little bit. I feel like he's like breathed in and held his breath for so long. And he definitely, like, the show earns that moment of vulnerability. You're right. Because his first reaction is to continue to put the walls up even higher and to say, like, I'm out of here. Let me disengage because this hurts and this is hard. And we see that he quickly can like let his walls down yet again. And I loved that we saw essentially that parallel trajectory for Joel when he puts his walls up initially with Ellie, and kind of he homeboy's got some fighting words, okay, in that conversation that he has with Ellie in that bedroom. Like when he says, "You're not my daughter, and I sure as hell ain't your dad." I was like, man, as a viewer, like that hurt me too, And I love the way that you see the way that he goes to bed, reflects on his actions, and wakes up the next morning seeking to rebuild that relationship and just to turn from a different direction. That's really hard to do. Like I have so much respect for Joel for being able to do that quickly, because in your deepest wounds and in your hardest moments, like it's so easy to just continue to sit and stew in that headspace of anger and to disengage, and to let your heart be soft again and to care and to invest is really hard. So I'm just impressed at the speed with which he is able to pick himself back up again, recover his heart, and really put it out there again.
I think for me, that actually might be one of my complaints about this episode, is that there are these moments of tension and then they're resolved almost immediately. And so we don't really have time to sit in the weight of those tense moments with these characters. And that's really the only tension that's in this episode. There's a little bit at the beginning with the dog sniffing Ellie, and then there's a little bit at the end when Joel gets stabbed. But like for the majority of the episode, they're just chilling in this commune, and nothing really, I don't know, like substantial things happen between these characters, and we learn more about who they are and how they communicate with one another, and we learn a little bit more about the relationships and what the future could look like in this world. But there's, I don't know, for me there were portions where I was just like, okay, like what are we doing? Can we just like, can we keep it moving? Like what are we doing? Because anytime there was a moment of tension between Tommy and Joel, then in the next scene it's resolved. Or, you know, that moment with Joel and Ellie, the next scene it's resolved. And I think it's in those moments of tension that and character conflict that you discover more about these characters. And so I think sometimes if a resolution comes too quickly, it doesn't have the same amount of emotional weight as it could have otherwise. I mean, it is nice to see like Joel engaging emotionally and like apologizing and all of those things, but I don't know. I almost wonder what it might have looked like if this show had leaned a little bit more into those tense moments and gone a little bit deeper with some of these things. I don't know. It may have been too much for this episode, but I think I wanted a little bit more from those interactions than we get in this episode.
You wanted the equivalent of Carmi in The Bear, who like spends an entire season and cannot muster up the courage to apologize to Claire.
It doesn't need to be that long, you know, but like, I don't know, can we have a few extra minutes? You know, it just seemed so quickly.
Yeah.
It's like moment of tension and then boom, resolved. I'm like, oh, okay. Wow. Oh, that was quick. Okay, we're just keeping it moving.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
And that might just be a me problem, but I just those moments of tension I don't think were utilized as well as they maybe could have.
Yeah, you're like, give it, like stretch that out a little bit, you know, and perhaps the kind of the like Ellie and Joel continuing to go on their journey, but perhaps it's not smoothed over as quickly as it is for them, where they're like back to bantering again and whatnot. Like maybe there's still the tension in the air of like a little bit of bitterness, a little bit of hurt feelings, you know, and that's really human. Like even though you know that you've ultimately like reconciled and are building that bridge back together again, like you still feel some type of way when someone said something really hurtful to you. So maybe a little bit more time in that space, and then to see that maybe their journey can warm up over time in that montage sequence could have helped maybe.
Yeah, because I think this show did a good job in this episode highlighting, you know, Ellie's greatest fear of ending up alone. And I loved that moment when they first enter the commune and Joel sees Tommy and begins yelling his name. And you see them laughing and smiling and like they're having this really great bonding moment. And then the camera focuses on Ellie and you see all of her fears just flash across her face. And you know that this is so harmful for her. And this is her worst fears realized. And so that's all in her. And then she has these moments with Joel and Tommy and I don't know, man. Ellie is great. She's such an interesting character, but I really don't think that she would be immediately back on board of like, yep, we're back in this together. We're back to being buds. Like, I don't know. I think that fear response maybe would have had a little bit more of control of her. But I don't know, that might just be me. But I think that there was an opportunity there for that to be a little bit more complex. And I think complexity in their relationship would have made for a little bit more interesting, I don't know, moments between those two characters than what we ultimately got.
Especially because there are like a series of shots and conversations that are kind of cut together of them continuing on their journey that we see, and like that having a mini arc would have been really neat. You know, like at the beginning, their first few conversations are maybe a little bit more icy, and then over time, as we also are feeling time passing as this montage is unfolding, maybe we see that, you know, she's warming up to him a little bit more.
And okay, here's my other question. I may have missed something, so apologies if I did. But why couldn't both Joel and Tommy go on this journey?
I had the same question.
So to me, it just felt like the show is creating tension. Like they're using this to create tension rather than there being a reason why only one of them could go. You know, like there's clearly enough horses. There's clearly enough rations. Tommy was already planning on going. Joel isn't doing anything else. Like, why couldn't they both go? And then we could have eliminated that silly source of tension and actually maybe dove deeper into other sources of tension between these characters.
I had that same question too, because it doesn't really make that much sense. I think that I read this episode kind of as Tommy knowing the whole time that ultimately Joel would be the one to take her. And he's just he's letting it play out the way it needs to play out. Because I think Tommy understands that maybe Joel's in this headspace where he's afraid of the responsibility and the guilt and all of that. But ultimately, like, the other dynamic here is that Tommy has shared that he is going to be a father, you know? And I think Tommy knows that ultimately Joel wouldn't allow Tommy to put himself in danger and put this new family in danger because he is who Joel is, you know, that ultimately he would come to his senses. And so there's a look that Tommy has when Joel is still preparing the horse and he's like, yeah, you know, I was supposed to leave 30 minutes ago, but I guess I'm still here. And there's kind of like I might just be reading into this and coming up with my own headcanon, but I read that a little bit as like Tommy being like, yeah, I knew we would come to this conclusion, you know, you just needed time. I played along and we did this whole thing and you've arrived at where I knew you would.
All right. We can accept that.
Because otherwise it doesn't make sense, you know, like Joel's logic makes no sense.
It does not make sense. I was so frustrated. I was like, y'all, there is a very clear solution to your problem that's just staring you straight in the face. Why is no one acknowledging that there's a solution here?
Yeah. Okay, other big things that we wanted to mention in this episode.
Joel gets stabbed.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's very frustrating that he took the stabbing implement out of his body, causing him to bleed out, potentially. But it's fine. So, you know, there's that. We got some new dramatic stuff going on. Ellie, heartbroken, pleading for Joel to wake up. I'm also like, she is a small child. He is a grown man. This is not going to end well. So that's very interesting. And it was all for nothing because nobody is at that university. So that's super cool.
Yeah. My one problem with the whole like Joel getting stabbed thing is that I think it's a little bit too soon to play that card, is my hot take. I feel like that is a really big emotional moment and whatnot that they should play in another a little bit later or in another way. It just feels a little bit too easy and quick and lightweight to have this come so quickly, especially so quickly after knowing that Ellie is afraid to lose him and they've just had this big moment and this bond and then, oh my gosh, like her person that she's built a connection with is like potentially at risk. Like it feels a little bit too soon to do this moment. I would have liked it a little bit later.
Yeah, I get that. I think for me, like this is a weird episode for me. I don't know. The pacing of it is weird. Decisions are made in this episode that don't make sense to me because I'm also like, okay, I get that at the commune they want to stay off the radio, yada yada, protection. Totally understand. Please stay safe. But also that means that you have a radio. So is there any way to make the radio portable and then the radio can travel with our travelers and potentially learn where the fireflies are? You know what? I think there are other options here as opposed to like, you know, one time I think some people were maybe at this location, so you should maybe check it out. I don't know. Like, this doesn't seem like a great plan for finding this group of people. Again, I wanted a little more brainstorming of like, man, is there anything else? Any other way that we can find these people so we're not like wasting days for no reason and then people getting stabbed? So it's fine. Now we're going to go on another side quest to try and save Joel. It's okay. But I'm like,
yeah,
how did we get here? What are we doing?
A whole nother side quest, indeed. I'm like, at this point, the fireflies are basically an oasis in the desert. I'm like, I don't know. We're never going to reach them. That's the whole point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or we are, and then they're gonna like the thing that I was curious or thinking about when they're like rolling up to the Fireflies camp is like I'm like this in the same way that we don't know how each QZ was run by this regime. And we learned, for example, that the Kansas City QZ was incredibly twisted and vile in the way that they ran theirs compared to like the Boston QZ, for example. I was like, maybe it would be fascinating for the show to explore what a Fireflies chapter that potentially has gone off the rails could look like. Like I think it would be obviously easy to paint them as the heroes and they're fighting for survival of humanity and how altruistic and wonderful and pure. But I would love to see kind of like a spectrum of flavors in different types of fireflies. And we've already met one that is so for the cause in Marlene that it would be great to see some unsavory and kind of like slightly twisted ideology of the fireflies.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Because you branch out, you got a franchise, you don't know how that other franchise leader is
Right?
going to run things. Things might go sideways.
And especially because Joel and Ellie are like, that is their main goal and their main hope right now. It would be smart for that to kind of not play out the way that they expected it to,
No, I like that. And I think for me, this show is starting to get to this point of like, are there other fireflies? Like, is there a science
Right.
wing? Is somebody working on this? Because it doesn't seem to be a thing. Like they were supposed to meet them, and
They're in Salt Lake City.
They were all dead. Yeah.
That feels like such a
And so,
misdirect,
like,
Seems like such a big misdirect.
Yeah. So I'm getting to the point of like, what are we doing? Because there doesn't seem to be this like grand plan of get Ellie to this point and then science.
Yeah.
Because
I think that's too easy.
There's nobody.
Yeah. And I think that's too easy, like I hope that the show gives us the long trajectory of like, it's not that simple. Like clearly if it was, we would have done it by now. You know what I mean? So yeah. But then it ushers in this new question of the Bear season 3 grappled with, which is like, what's our new mission now? Okay, the original mission was get Ellie to the doctors. There are no doctors.
Yes.
What do we do with Ellie now?
Yes, because Ellie somehow has a cure within her person. So how do we synthesize the cure to then, help everybody?
Yeah. Okay. I like it.
But I am appreciating that we're seeing these different types of ways that humans gather together, because it's almost addressing the like, what do we do after?
Yeah.
We've seen how the QZ is run. We see how the Boston Fireflies are run. We don't know if they're anywhere else. We see the madness that is Kansas City. And then we see this commune in Wyoming. And so we're seeing the different ways that human beings are gathering together and building community together, and what those different structures could look like, both healthy and unhealthy. And so I'm appreciating that piece of it, because whether or not they're able to get a cure for this fungus business, humans are going to have to continue to figure out how to work together and be together in communities. So I'm liking that. I would like to see maybe more of that as we're continuing on. But now we're on a side quest of saving Joel's life, which is important. We like Joel. We want him to survive. So we'll see kind of how that pans out, and if that will usher in maybe some new communities or some new people doing things maybe a different way.
Mm-hmm. And I love that there's a small little conversation I think that Ellie and Joel have on their journey where she's asking about essentially like governmental systems and the different ways that pre-fungal outbreak, how was society organized? And Joel summarizes it with broad strokes as in like, some believe that like everyone should have a fair share of the same portion. And then others believe that, few, well, not believe, but it's often played out where like a few have a lot and then a lot don't have much. And it's essentially the questions around systems of government. And later on in the episode, we see that they're given a tour of this commune, and I think it's Joel that makes a comment that says like, "Oh, so this is communism, basically." And I just love the way that the show is suggesting, teasing, insinuating these concepts and ideas without having to like have a whole manifesto on the different forms of governmental systems. But you're right, that is prompting us as viewers to think about the questions of like the same fundamental dichotomies and debates about human beings organizing themselves in society together will still be there once we've found the cure. And that is a fascinating concept to even think about. We're going to need the equivalent of like the Continental Congress of the colonies to figure out like, how do we organize and set up our governments now? You know, like who is in control? We see that Maria is the elected person in power to help steward the commune in Jackson, but in the hands of a less altruistic leader, like the same problems of society that we as humans have been reckoning with for centuries will still exist, you know? So a lot is still the same.
And I loved that moment when Joel asks about like, oh, is this communism? Because Tommy says no at first. It's this like knee-jerk reaction of like, oh no, that's not what this is. And then Maria is like, well, we are literally living on a commune, so yeah. And so it just I loved that moment because there's so many times when like we'll be doing a thing and it'll be working really well and we'll be like it'll be working for everybody, but then sometimes a label is put on it and then people don't want to do that thing anymore, and communism is one of those like boogeyman words of like, oh no, that's a bad thing, we are capitalists, capitalism to save the day. So I loved that moment where even though it's been all these years and they finally figured out a way and a system that works for their community, Tommy still has that label baggage. And it's probably because his brother is here now. And so Tommy is figuring out how to be himself with his brother here too. And so he doesn't want to, after you've been away for a while and then you come back home, it's that weird, like, I don't know how to be. And I feel like that's one of those examples of Tommy sitting in that tension of like, I don't know what to do now because my brother is here.
Yeah, and the other variable in this equation is that it's so clear that Maria feels some type of way about Joel, and so like you mentioned at the beginning of the episode, everybody gets tense, and so you can feel the tension there as well, where she is clearly aware of and the past and all of the vague insinuations of like the things we did back then, the shit we did back then, and it's clear that Joel knows that Maria knows too, and so there's a lot of like subtext in that first meeting with all of them together too, and then you throw Ellie into the mix.
That is another example of how this is a holiday episode. Is we got some tense family gatherings happening here.
I love that. Oh my goodness, yes. Yeah. Okay, other big things we want to mention from this episode before we give out some awards. Did we hit them all?
I think so. I don't know.
Did
anything else happen in this
episode?
My
one other thing that I wanted to mention is that we've mostly seen for the past couple of episodes Ellie with Joel one-on-one, and do like throw one or two new people into the mix. And we haven't seen her in like organized society yet. And it's fascinating to see the way that she's a lot more combative and has way more of an attitude as a defense mechanism as she's meeting all of these new people. And I forgot that side of her, that's how we're introduced to Ellie as a character in episode 1. And we've seen now this really playful, softer, childlike side of her that's really like vulnerable and open and endearing. And you see all of that kind of retreat a little bit as she's in this new environment and maybe doesn't feel that same level of safety that she's felt when it's just her and Joel. And so seeing that side of her come out again as she's navigating all of these new faces, these new humans, the lack of trust that she has, and some of them manifesting in her attitude, I think was notable character moment for understanding how Ellie is wired too.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see her because at the beginning of the episode, we've learned that she has better adapted to life on the road and traveling with Joel, and she's learned all these things. She's picked up all of these additional skills. She is doing a great job on this traveling mission, just the two of them. And then you see her in this other context, in this little society, and she has no idea what to do. And so it's so interesting to watch her navigate that, like, especially because it's all of her worst fears essentially are being exposed here, and that feeling of being an outsider, I feel like is perfectly encapsulated in this episode. Even when she's sitting there and she's reading the diary and she's like, really? Is this what teenage girls had to deal with? Really? I loved all of those little moments when she's like, oh, this is not it.
Yes.
This is not for me.
Yes. Her discovering the period products was so funny. Oh my gosh.
Oh, it's so good.
I loved it. It was too good.
Well, and I really appreciate the show because this is the second episode that we've seen like feminine hygiene products in an episode. In an earlier episode, she finds a box of tampons and it's like, yes, score. And then we see that again here. And I love that because like menstruation is a thing that happens every month, whether or not there's an apocalypse. So I just appreciate this show's inclusion of that, because that is something that I don't think is ever mentioned or talked about in like post-apocalyptic or dystopian things, but is a reality for half of the population. So it's subtle, it's little, but I'm really appreciating that inclusion.
Yeah, no, and it's cool to see the way that the show weaves in these small details, these small little moments, but they make for a really funny, entertaining moment. But also, like, there's an element of, yeah, this is real stuff that women have to deal with, man. So, infected beings or not,
sure do.
nature.
Yeah,
nature runs its course, as we've seen in all forms.
It does.
Fungal outbreaks and your friend of the month.
Yep. They're here no matter what. So it's things to look forward to.
Oh, I never thought that we'd compare the menstrual cycle to the fungal outbreaks, but here we are. It's great.
I mean, thank you, The Last of Us.
Yeah. Okay, let's give out some TVNS awards, shall we? The first category is for Scrappiest Survivor. What is your choice for this one?
Okay, I want to give this to Marlon and Florence for successfully avoiding all of the people.
Yes, they're living their best life. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah, I had so much fun with them. I just wanted to stay in their house and just listen to them bicker. Like, just start a YouTube channel. It would be great.
A vlog. My choice for this award is the entire Commonwealth of Jackson, Wyoming. They have string lights in town, okay? Like, that is a full-fledged society. If you have string lights in your main square, you're doing something right. Okay, the next category is Grittiest Moment. What is your choice?
My choice is Ellie having to stay in such a girly room.
Oh my gosh! Well chosen. I love that. Oh my gosh.
It's pretty rough. Like, I wouldn't want to stay in that room. I can only imagine how Ellie felt in that room.
That's got to be my favorite Grittiest Moment award winner so far that you've given out. Well done. My choice for Grittiest Moment is the entire manual of the menstrual product. It's horrifying.
Yes. So
horrifying. The things we women have to deal with, man. It's gritty.
Honestly, though, like,
gritty stuff.
To any guys that are listening to this, just do something nice for the women in your life today, because we go through a lot that you don't have to deal with. Just Go out of your way to celebrate a woman today.
PSA to Mathis. Brought to you by The Last of Us Episode 6. Okay, the next category is Straight Shooter Award. What is your choice for this one? Line of dialogue.
Yeah, I want to give it to Tommy for when he says to Joel, just because life stopped for you doesn't mean it has to stop for me.
Yo, that one hurt. That one cut deep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no fluff in that at all.
Oh, yeah, there's some fighting words spoken in this episode. From Tommy, from Joel.
Yep.
Yeah. My choice for this award is when they are rolling up to the Firefly camp and it is like dead silent because they have to be quiet and they clearly sense danger. And Ellie just goes, gun? Joel says, yeah. That's it. The efficiency. It's great.
Honestly, though, clear communication. We knew what was going on. Very
no
efficient.
Wasted words, no wasted breath.
We love to see
no
it.
wasted saliva.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, looking ahead, we are making our way towards the finale of this episode. Time is flying. The journey is journeying. What are you excited for in episode 7?
Okay, can I say what I don't want to happen?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm going to be so upset if Tommy shows up on a horse to save Joel. I will throw my shoe. I will be so upset because that is not what we're doing here. I don't want that. I would like Joel to survive. That's great. I don't want Tommy to just like saunter in and save the day. But I am very curious to see how Ellie is going to navigate this situation. What piece is on the board that we haven't seen yet that is then going to come to Ellie's aid is kind of where I'm at. Because I don't know, it doesn't seem to be very many options for her. So how is she going to respond to this, or who is going to happen to come along? I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. I'm really this like as much as I don't like that this is happening, that they're playing the like Joel is hard card. It is really smart for Ellie's character development. So what I'm hopeful or excited to see is her having to make decisions on her own and to make maybe some hard choices or to lean on herself. She's learned so much from being with Joel, but she's often like relied on and leveraged his expertise in navigating some of these different sticky situations. And it's going to be really exciting to see her grow in her confidence to navigate the world and trust herself. And so I think that's going to be really fun to see, is like, well, that's what I want to see, I guess. The show might not go that direction. Maybe Tommy will show up on Shimmer, gallantly rolling through.
I will be so annoyed.
Shoes will be thrown.
I will. If that happens, I'm going to pause the episode and I'm going to send you a voice memo that is just me yelling because I will be upset.
Yeah, it'd be too cheesy. That's so lame. They can't do that. They can't do that. It's also just
this show.
It pushes no plot forward, you know? Yeah. So I'm hopeful that we get to see Ellie's growth and her having to be like, all right, it's me now. Like, I can do this. You know, we've seen those protector instincts in her before, and her being able to access them and use all of the skills that she's been given, that Joel's been teaching her along the way, will be really fun. And I don't know, the show's been showing us so many of those moments of her training that I'm like, surely this might pay off in some interesting way. You know, he's showing her how to hold the rifle, how to hold the gun, how to aim, like how to navigate all these situations. So she's trained up now. Time to put it into practice.
Oh my gosh, yes. And she's going to kill it. Like, I have full faith in Ellie as a survivor. She's got this. I'm just very curious because he's a whole man who can't move, who is bleeding out right now. Like, this isn't something that you can just like, oh, okay, we can take our time finding help. It's just a little scratch. Like, no, this is a dire situation. In addition to the fact that this episode is revealing more of Joel's health issues and that he seems to have a very serious condition, maybe like a heart thing going on. Like there's something else here with him. So he was already not at 100%, and now he's stabbed and bleeding out. Like this is a bad situation. So how is Ellie going to respond with all of that? But I think you're right. I think this is a great character growth opportunity, and I believe in our girl. She's got this.
Yeah. Yeah. So we shall see. The other thing that I'm curious about now that the show's revealed or given us a little bit more, whet our appetite a little bit more around this area, is clearly Maria's got some warnings for Ellie based on the things that she's learned about Joel. And obviously Joel has continuously insinuated that they've done some bad things in their past. And so one, I'm curious what those are, because I'm just like a curious cat. But then two, I would imagine that based on some of those things that he's done, he's also, had some enemies that are still out there roaming. And so how will that intersect with their mission, with their journey? How will he stumble upon, some of the people that he's encountered in the past that maybe he's betrayed or whatnot, that are back and have some feelings to share with him. More obstacles.
Okay.
More obstacle options.
Yeah. I like it. That sounds great. Let's have some enemies, maybe some frenemies show up. That would be great. That would be interesting.
Right? We've seen the whole rise of Kathleen, so I would assume that there's more that are like her. Yeah.
Yes. Who are the other Kathleens that we will stumble upon?
And instead of Henry in their mouth, the name in the mouth, it'll be Joel. The name in the mouth.
Yeah. Okay.
Fun.
Okay. I'm here
just
for
dreaming
this.
up new obstacles for our duo, really.
No, I like it. I'm also curious, are there any other Firefly chapters that exist? Or are we literally just going to make kind of a weird oval and end up right back in the Boston QZ?
Oh, yeah. Back to Marlene to be like, bro, they aren't out there anymore.
Like, yeah. WTF. Also,
oh no,
can we find another radio? Because that actually might be more efficient. Maybe did the Fireflies leave a radio when they left? I don't know.
Yeah.
Can we have some form of communication rather having to walk across the country?
Through the open city. Yeah.
Right? Like, this feels dangerous. Are there any other solutions available?
We also didn't get any infected beings in this episode, so I'm hoping we're going to get lots of good, juicy action in the next one. Seems to be a pattern.
Here's a question, because I don't know science. How does fungus do in the cold?
I had that same thought, too, when they were walking through the snow.
Excellent.
Yeah. I'm assuming that it's still thriving, because we looked this up and it can survive underwater, so I'm assuming it is resilient as hell.
Also, there were infected in Boston, and it snows in Boston. So I guess that makes sense. Okay, never mind. I rescind my question.
But no, it's a good question, because the other aspect of that is I think someone, maybe the Indonesian scientist mentioned that it can mutate. So do the different types of infected beings with different superpowers that we've seen mutate based on their environments and the conditions and the weather, So does the fungus that infects infected beings manifest differently in the cold than in the heat, than in in the humidity?
Okay.
I don't know.
So the California fungus is different than the Boston fungus. Got it. I like it. That makes sense.
They had those giant, very strong monsters that emerged out of the ground.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the whole thing.
Which was hilarious. I laughed every time that dude was on screen, which is not what I was supposed to do, but he was hilarious.
Yes.
So good.
Yes.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I wonder how long those mutations take, because again, I don't know science. Could it have mutated that quickly? It's only been 20 years.
True.
I don't know if that's quick in fungus time.
True. Yeah.
but that does seem plausible that it would mutate according to its surroundings.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Interesting. All right.
We got some
good questions.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
We do.
I like it.
All right. Well, this is our review and discussion of episode 6. You can find it available on Max to stream. Thank you for listening to today's episode of TVNS. Our name sums it up. We're big fans of TV and the powerful ways we connect with each other and the world around us. This podcast is about all of us and our shared stories. So everyone is welcome here. And we're so glad you spent time with us today as we continued our journey through The Last of Us Season 1. You can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you tune to your favorite shows. Drop us a rating and review, letting us know your thoughts about Episode 6. You can connect with us on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at TVNSPod, or email us at tvnspod@gmail.com. We will be back very soon to continue our journey on to episode 7. We hope you have an amazing week, and we'll chat again very soon.